I want to start out by talking about this idea because we just had some of your guys out training us for fire safety for the season ahead, and they described the campfire as, the first 24 hours wasn't even a firefight. We were just trying to save lives and get people the hell out of there. And I'm curious, how much better are we at that this year than we were last?
That is always a big problem for us because fires kind of dictate different circumstances every single time. So you can't really pre-script an evacuation. We need to identify, and we have identified those areas for ingress and egress where we have problems, and try and direct people to more safe routes out. And we have those kind of things mapped at the local level, and we're continuing to kind of tune our evacuation planning and people moving processes. One of the interesting things about the campfire and Paradise in particular is that we really did practice that ahead of time. And it really is the truth that there could have been many, many more deaths in that fire had we not had a proactive community and emergency services practicing the evacuation of a whole town.
We identified some people who literally didn't know they were under an evacuation order for a matter of maybe 2 hours that day. And I'm wondering what advice you would have to people who live in, the various paradises of California and other places like it. What would you tell people to do when they see smoke, knowing what can happen, knowing we can lose a whole town in one of these fires?
I'm not saying that every smoke is going to turn into a campfire, but when you're in a location where smoke is coming to you, you can see that it is coming to your location.
Or
that
it's
means
dark out now.
Yeah, or it's dark out because the smoke has overtaken the sun. You will. It's likely that fire is coming in your direction, and so heeding evacuation warnings. Looking for opportunities to evacuate, not waiting for the warning. You can always come back if a warning never comes and you've left, then you can always come back. It's not going to change anything that way. If you have left early, then you're ahead of the crunch that might occur when evacuation orders turn into a mandatory and everybody's crunching into the road systems trying to get out.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend that everybody do, and this is every Californian, just look at our readysetgo.com correction, readyforwildfire.com, and our Ready Set Go app that you can find on any app store. And identify those things that pertain to where you live.
How much do you encourage people to, think like firefighters do and be looking for safety zones? Should people be thinking about oh yeah, if the fire comes and I can't get out in time, I'm going to the high school and I'm going to ride it out on the football field or whatever it is?
Work with your local fire department, your fire safe councils, and your local elected officials to identify that and spread that information throughout your community. It's not just about what we can do for ourselves, it's what we can do for our communities to make sure that we all have the same understanding of what we need to do in the event of a wildfire.
CAL FIRE has determined that PG&E did cause the campfire, and I'm wondering, how does that work and how much can you share about what specifically happened that day?
There was a failure of parts of the system that caused arcing and molten material to fall from their high tension lines, transmission lines, which usually don't cause fires, but in this case, if they do arc, they have the opportunity to cause a fire. In this case, that's what our investigation shows, and unfortunately it happened under high wind conditions and very dry conditions.
It's not the kind of thing you would expect to happen.
It's not the kind of thing that we would expect to happen. Obviously, we have come to realize in recent years that power infrastructure really is something that we need to pay attention to, particularly when winds occur. Southern California, particularly the Witch and Wajito fires in 2007, really gave us an idea of what the catastrophic capabilities of multiple starts of fires from electrical source can be in wind conditions. And we've been building toward a more resilient system. San Diego Gas and Electric has spent a lot of time and money to harden their system, and we're seeing that investment moving up through Southern California Edison and Pacific Gas and Electric, and then the private and smaller utilities as well.
And I think PG&E itself has described wear on one of its metal hooks on that line, like a J hook that was up there. Are you able to talk about that in any way, or no?
While our report is complete, the rest of the investigation that is going to follow is not complete.
My understanding is you only forward it to prosecutors if you believe that a law may have been broken. Is that right?
We don't determine what laws or codes have been broken necessarily. We do determine what our thoughts are, and we will share those with the district attorney as requested to. But there's also very much a separate process.
Are you able to share whether you know this was the absolute cause of this fire?
We know that this was an electrical cause fire from molten material that fell to the ground.
So it's worth focusing on making the power grid safer, but it isn't the sum total of the problem.
That is very true. It is very worth working on that problem, and we are working with the CPUC on ways to better harden the fire-prone areas around where electrical grid might have a failure.
And I know you coming from San Diego, they've done a lot of work down there. They came up with new weather models and everything, so you could get beyond red flag yes or no. It's a lot more granular than that. Is that the direction we need to go in the rest of the state? And can you do it given the fact that PG&E goes from the coast to the high Sierra Peak? It's not just a couple of environments they're in.
What the utilities will need to do is better identify methods for their system to shut down small portions of the electrical grid and not have to really shut down entire counties or very large areas of Northern California.
How much faith do you have in the shutoff plans they've made?
It's growing. It's growing with input from state agencies, Cal OES, us, the CPUC, and I think it has a ways to go. It will mature over time, but it is a method that the utilities will be using this summer to reduce the potential for large and damaging fires.
Do you think people are appropriately prepared for the kinds of outages that we're going to see?
We need to be as ready for power to be out for several days as we are for earthquakes and fire evacuations. This is all this is what Californians need to be ready to do. They need to be ready to be self-sufficient and take care of themselves for several days at a time. And what we as government officials are doing is really working to make sure that our most vulnerable populations, those that have mobility issues, maybe some health care and systems that they really need to have power in order to run, that we're making sure that the power companies, the utilities are ensuring that there are places for those people to evacuate to or go to make sure those services can be provided in time of need.
Do you accept the idea of us being in a new normal, and what does that mean to you?
In the first 2/3 of my career, the old timers would talk about career fires. They would talk about, see you on the big one, because that's where everybody in the state kind of would see each other. People you went to the academy with that you haven't seen in several years, you'd see them at the big one. We don't talk about that anymore. It is almost gone from our vocabulary.
They're all career fires.
The big one, the career fire. We are finding times where now we're having multiple career fires every single season. And it
sometimes
seems like
at the same time.
Sometimes at the same time. And it is really stretching our system to the bone.
Could we lose another whole town again?
Every county in California has communities that could be impacted like Paradise was by wildfire.
Every county.
Every county. Maybe not San Francisco County, and Imperial County is a possible, depending on grass crop during rainy seasons, which this is one of those.
Yeah, every fire chief I've talked to has talked about how it's cheaper to treat than it is to fight the fire, right? What's happening with that scale? Is that gotten even just like more out of whack than it always was, or like how would you tell people to think about that?
We know that it's cheaper for us to do fire prevention and reduce the catastrophic effects of wildfire by doing this fuel reduction project work. It's still a very expensive undertaking to do this type of landscape level work.
I think people haven't really gotten their minds around the idea, though, that we need to do 1 million acres of like literal landscaping work every year forever. Is that basically what we're in for?
It really is. We have neglected forest management and wildland health for decades, many decades, and it's going to take decades to kind of turn that. I mean, we really need to look at everything that we possibly can to reduce the impacts of these wildfires on primarily the human-built environment, because that's who we are and who expects us to protect them and their resources, assets, and property. But we have to do that by looking at the whole system all the way out into the natural environment and understanding that we have not managed or managed improperly the natural environment by letting it grow in a way that kept wildfire out of it. And now at this point we need to reintroduce treatments and allow wildfire to burn in it naturally in the future. But we have a generation of people who have never known what a healthy forest actually looks like.
Like it doesn't.
In most forests in California, that particularly those that people are in and around, has not been in a healthy state for decades and a generation. So we have grown up really seeing forest that is not in a healthy state. We're embarking upon something that's going to take decades to turn the course of what forest health really is in California and what fire regimes actually need to be in California.
Yeah.
And so
like you're going to be long retired before we get the forest to where it wants to be, and so am I.
We are. Yeah, we will not be having this conversation in this capacity when the forest is finally healthy. I mean, this is going to be probably our kids or grandkids as a state. It's going to be their legacy. Should we put them put our efforts in the right place to get where we want to be or where we need to be in the future, our grandkids might be able to see some of that effect.
Where they can just start maintaining instead of having a problem that's lying out there to fix.
Yeah.
But it's doable?
It is doable. It's gonna require sustained effort and sustained investment, in some cases in money, but in resolve. We really need to resolve to stay on course to fix this problem.